This will be a video response to the Indefatigable Theist's video titled Overview of Popular Gay Marriage Arguments. The first thing is that I have to commend you for distancing yourself from the religious aspect of your perspective on gay marriage. Why? Well, because it really doesn't do anything to help your case. In fact, if anyone said straight up to my face, I don't accept gay marriage because God told me it was wrong, then my response would essentially be, fuck off, you joke. Having said that, I am here to show you today exactly why I think your arguments are flawed. You place a lot of emphasis on burden of proof, as you point out that since it is us on the pro-gay side who want to change the laws regarding marriage between one man and one woman to include same-sex couples, then the burden of proof and the onus essentially is on us to show exactly why that should be the case. And what I've noticed is that you've had this whole clamoring of burden of proof with other people who have addressed this video, and I don't really care for that much. So, you know what, if you think I need to fulfill a burden of proof, by all means I will carry it. I've mentioned a lot of these reasons why we should support gay marriage in other videos of mine, so I'm going to inevitably sound like a broken record here. But some reasons are that it does no inherent harm to society, does no inherent harm to heterosexual couples. I see no reason why we should deny gay people the legal standing and the tax benefits and various other niceties that straight people can reap the rewards of due to the fact that they can get married while gay people can't. And that's just a brief overview, mind you. The main argument you're trying to address here is that marriage is really about love, and why should we discriminate against two people who love each other very much, regardless of whether or not they're straight, gay, or whatever? Your main problem with that is that, well, what's to stop us from applying this sort of logic to pedophiles and people who love inanimate objects and whatnot? And you know what? That's a slippery slope fallacy if I've ever seen one. You realize there is more than one reason why people get married, right? Love may not be the only thing, although some might argue it's a very large factor. But there are a lot of reasons why people get married. So you say, yes, that type of logic can apply to all forms of love, and in a sense I agree. But at the same time, your logic could apply to any sort of situation. Take, for instance, in America, once upon a time in history, when we were fighting for the rights of colored people, then anti-colored people rights activists would say, oh, well, if you give colored people the right to marry, then you're going to give gays and lesbians the right to marry, and then you're going to give men the right to marry children, and then you're going to give, like, people the right to marry donkeys and inanimate objects. Like, you can use that slippery slope with any sort of situation. So, are you honestly going to tell me that the right to marry between two gay people, two consenting, of age gay people, is exactly the same thing as a man or a woman trying to marry a 6-year-old child? Are you going to honestly tell me those two can be equated somehow? No, that's ridiculous. So why would you even think of bringing that up if it's completely unrelated? Personally, I'm very liberal when it comes to this stuff. I have absolutely no issue if two people love each other, whether they're family members or not, whether they're gay or straight or whatever, as long as that person is old enough to make informed consent, i.e. not arranged marriage, not marriage to a child because children do not comprehend the responsibilities within marriage, but as long as the two people in question are able to make informed consent, then I see absolutely no reason why the state should meddle in their affairs. Inevitably, there will be questions like, well, how do you tell if someone is able to consent to marriage? How do you tell if they understand what you have to do in order to get married? What responsibilities and duties are involved in being married with someone else? Well, the system isn't perfect, okay? There are a lot of questions that still need answers, some which may never get answers. But we have to take the first step here. And the first step, I think, is realizing that denying gays, lesbians, transgendered, and bi people the right to marry is not only bigoted, not only an abomination to what your founding fathers stood for and what we in Canada stand for, but it's highly inefficient. Look at how many resources we're wasting just to deny gay people a right they should technically already have. The second main problem you have with this is this whole redefining of marriage that you seem to have a problem with. And this is a very prevalent thing with the anti-gay side for some reason. You presented a quote here by Mr. Chuck Cooper, who is the leading counsel in the Supreme Court case, which states, and I quote, "The concern is that redefining marriage as a genderless institution will sever its abiding connection to its historic, traditional, procreative purposes, and it will focus the purpose of marriage and the definition of marriage away from the raising of children and to the emotional needs and desires of adults." Unquote. Okay. So some couples like to raise children, some couples like to procreate, but that's not a necessity of all couples. We are not legally bound to raise children when we get married. If this is your contention, then you would be against a whole lot of other people, including common law couples, couples who are infertile or celibate. Like, there's no inherent reason to state that the purpose of marriage is simply for procreation or for the sake of raising children. These are not state interests. They're private interests. The fact that marriage may have been traditionally defined to imply that it was designed for procreative purposes, to me, is irrelevant, because the past is the past. And you know what? We are in the 21st century here. We have different norms and values, maybe some that we didn't have back then. In other words, I don't really give a damn if marriage was traditionally for procreative purposes. What I care about now is whether or not two consenting people, regardless of why they want to marry, if they can have the right to marry. That's all I need to know. The second problem with this is, well, take a look at how this logic might be used in the case of interracial marriage. Oh, well, why are you trying to redefine marriage as between a man and a woman of any race? Are you trying to demean and take away from the traditional values of marriage between one white man and one white woman? And even you have to admit that that logic sounds rather shaky, because marriage between a black person and a white person does not devalue the idea of marriage between two white people, in the same sense that marriage between one gay man and another does not somehow devalue marriage for one straight man and one straight woman. The final sort of subpoint you have is that if we really do define marriage as love, which I did not do so, but let's just say people do. So if we define marriage as love, then people are just going to get married haphazardly and they're going to get divorced because they don't actually love each other, and then our children are going to be raised haphazardly. Oh, think of the children, right? Alas, I think not. What proof do you have that suggests that marriage is the only way that children can be raised as a proper family? See, you claim to have viewed this completely from a secular perspective, but I can still see the hints of your religion and your old antiquated beliefs latching on to your supposedly secular arguments. I have seen no such study to suggest that heterosexual parents somehow together, married for the rest of their lives, make better parents than two separated parents, or gay parents, or foster parents, or whatever. I would like to see a study that would show that somehow. And I don't even like what you're implying here. So you're going to imply that the ideal childhood raising sort of conditions are one heterosexual couple married in the same house? Well, what if they're miserable together? Their misery is going to impact their kid, versus maybe if they're separated, they can raise their kid in a much more ordered and peaceful fashion than if they had to fight constantly, you know? Now, you don't have to take anything I say as true, because this is going to be my subjective opinion, okay? But I live in Canada, and gay marriage is not only legal here, but the LGBT have kind of melded in with our culture and become a little subculture of their own. And it's quite interesting to walk into the LGBT-dominated parts of town, I think. But we haven't died yet. The apocalypse has not come onto Canada. Same-sex marriage and heterosexual marriage are just as meaningful here. Now, unless you show me some evidence to suggest that that certain countries will die because gays are taking over the land, if you show me some evidence that suggests that gay marriage will somehow devalue the meaning of marriage, if you show me some proof that gay marriage would provide a non-ideal environment to raising children, then I'll be a little bit more convinced. But until you show me evidence that a country is burned to the fucking ground just because of legalization of gay marriage, I will remain adamant on my position. May the truth always be heard. Peace.